Okay, so after looking this up, because I haven't done too many rear ends, I know how to do it, but not some of the basic principles of how to move stuff around, what I need to do to move stuff around. This pattern here, where it's on the, I believe they call that the heel of the gear. I thought that was to, I had to bring the ring gear closer, but I have almost no free play right now. I have no backlash. It's almost zeroed out, which means I don't have enough backlash. So what I need to do is I need to take one of those 10,000ths shims out and move that back. And then what this pattern here actually indicates is that the pinion gear is too far away from the ring gear. So I need to add a shim to the ring gear, which is why when you set something like this up, especially when you're doing brand new gears, if you're just replacing stuff, you can put everything back the way it was and use all your same shims. But when you're adding new gears, everything changes back here, and you have to have it right, otherwise it's going to make noise. It's going to have bad ring gear wear, pinion wear. You could take chunks out of your gears themselves if it's not set up right. So that's why it's important to have a setup bearing for your pinion. So when you have to keep, pulling it out and putting it back in multiple times, that way you can change your pinion shim without pressing that bearing off and then having to press that back on and taking the chance of ruining your brand new bearing. So I have a setup bearing sitting on that pinion right now, and that's what I'm using to set everything up. It back here is that setup, and it's a good thing that I did, because the rule is that when you set up a new set of gears, you start out with all the shims that your car or the rear end came with, if it came together, and that's kind of your baseline. So if you set it up, everything up, like I used the original shim for my pinion bearing, or for my pinion gear. I used the original shim for my pinion gear that the car came with, and that's not going to be enough, because I have too much pattern out. You know, the pinion bearing, the pinion gear is contacting the toe or the heel of the gear, and you don't want that. What you want is you want it in the middle, and in the middle this way too. So I'm going to take this apart again, and I'm going to remove one of the 10,000th shims from the driver's side, and then, or the ring gear side, and then I'm going to take the pinion gear out and add a shim to it. I'm going to start with a 10,000th shim, and then you kind of creep up on it. You don't want to overdo it, but you don't want to underdo it too. So like 10,000ths, add a 10,000ths, see where you're at. If that's not good enough, then you take it all back apart and then try it again. And then each time you're checking your backlash or your free play in your gear. Like right now I have no backlash again, so I have to remove one of those shims. But you check your backlash, and then you also check your ring pattern. And the kit that I got, the install kit that I got, the pattern checking paint, the yellow paint that you see everybody have on their rear ends, mine was completely dried out, so that kit had been sitting around for a very long time. I couldn't get anything out of it, so I went ahead and used some anti-seize compound, because it's silver, it doesn't really dry, and it'll show me my ring pattern. And then once I'm done and I have to take everything back apart again to put the actual bearing that I'm going to use on my pinion, I can clean everything off, and then I can start to do the final assembly on everything. It's just, when you're doing something like this, it's a process. You have to do all the steps. You have to do all the steps that you to get to the right setting that you need for it to be set up properly, not wear out your clutches, not wear out your gears, not have any rear end noise, anything like that. And it's always good, even after you've done all the steps and set up your rear end to the best of your ability at the time, to take the car for a test drive and see if it produces any rear end noise, you're hearing anything. Even though you've set everything up and you've used your dial calipers and your dial indicators and all the tools that are available out there to do this stuff, it's always good to do another initial test drive to make sure that you're not hearing anything that could be of concern. You know, clunks, you know, any grinding noises, you know, humming noises, anything like that, because that can be an indication that you don't have something set right. So even people that are full-on professionals and do this daily, they still like to take the vehicles for a test drive after they've finished doing their work, because they want to, that's the way that they can check their work and make sure that they did it properly and that the customer shouldn't have any issues. So me, I don't do this professionally. I don't do this every day. I've probably only had a couple of rear ends apart in my entire life. So I know the principles behind it, but not every single step, and it's a learning experience. Everything you do on a vehicle that you haven't done, 10,000 times is a learning experience. You learn something new every day. So when I decided to tackle this job, I knew I could do it. I knew I had most of the basic tools to do it. I needed to buy some of the specialized tools for the dial indicators and the magnetic bases and all that stuff for checking all the specs for it. But it'll be something that I can, another notch in my belt that I can say, hey, I've done that. I can do that. So that's just how I'm doing it, and I'm glad you're here to follow along. But now I'm going to, that's the trunk floor. There's nothing I can do about that, and I have to have the camera back far enough so that it's not in my way when I take this 30-40 pound chunk of steel out of there, that I don't knock the camera over. But that's about the best angle I can get. I don't have anything that, it would be nice if I had a tripod for this GoPro that sits a little bit lower, but this is all I got. The only downside to using anti-seize compound is that when you're all done, you literally are wearing this stuff everywhere. This stuff gets everywhere. You can't wipe your hands off enough to get rid of that stuff. So just I just barely got started today, and it's already getting on my fingers. And the joys of being an auto mechanic. Well, I finally got a good pattern on the 410 gears. Well, it's what I think is a good pattern. I really couldn't get to move as much as I've seen pictures and videos of on the internet, but what I have is I'm guessing, or I'm kind of being led to believe is actually an okay pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and go with it. Worst case scenario, I have to pull this all back apart and do it all over again, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm getting ready to press this on here. I may have to adjust it again. Yeah, I don't think it's going to go far enough. Hopefully I get it pressed on there straight. Now they ship you a gasket with this, but from the factory, all it has is just RTV silicone. And it wasn't leaking, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and use the gasket anyways. It's just a thin cork gasket, but I use some RTV on it. Keeping my fingers crossed that my pattern's good. When I didn't have the exact same bearing for setup that I had for the actual install bearing. And that was something that I found out later after I'd already bought the bearing, the setup to set up, that was actually an issue. So I guess I'm gonna give her a shot. I've got it filled with fluid and friction modifier and everything like that. I got my drive shafts all in. My exhaust system, including my headers, is all installed. The only thing I have left to do is install my steering coupler, and then it's good. I still got to finish, of course, you know, body work and all that stuff, and getting that all cut in and painted, which is gonna drive me insane because I want to hear what this thing sounds like with full headers in it. But